May we agree to say amen.
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 Pledge to
Flag.
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the
to the
republic
republic for which it
for which it
stands,
stands, one
one
nation,
under
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice for all.
for all.
All right, very good. Thank you, Charlie. And we've got one quick announcement. Could I call on Darren? You want to make a quick announcement here, and then we'll get right into the meeting.
Thank you, President Scott. So good news, guys. The results are in. We've got our 3 top candidates this year for the Rotary Scholarship, and I'm going to read their names in no particular order, in alphabetical order, rather. So there is an order. Gracie Hollowbrook from Panther Creek, Jake Park Walters from Green Hope, and Paulina Uzunu from Green Hope also will be our 3 candidates. So thank you everyone who was involved in that. And then the Tuesday after spring break is when we'll have our interviews via Zoom, and then the results will be the following Tuesday. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Darren. Great update. Appreciate all your work on that. And now we're going to move right into our presentation today. If I could call on Pat Hudson to come up and introduce our very special guest for today's meeting. Pat?
I think it's amazing that having done this for a year, this is the first glitch we've had. So congratulate our tech people. That's not me. Our speaker today is somebody that you all have, some of you have met before. Years ago, when Chris Walker was president, we had a project to clean up Black Creek. And so we went out several Saturdays and we waded in the creek and we cleaned up the greenway. It was a great project, and it culminated with doing 2 rain gardens at West Cary Middle School. And Christy was the responsible person for that. And we've looked at that again. And we think that it's time for another work day. Christy actually has money and is going to be planning one. So we'll get more information in hopes that we will see some of you out there to play in the water or play in the dirt. Thank you. Now to introduce Christy. As Sustainable Waters and Communities Coordinator with WRRI and North Carolina Sea Grant at NC State, Christy provides leadership to initiatives that involve multiple sectors and residents in sustainably planning, protecting, and restoring natural resources. She has worked in both coastal and Piedmont areas to identify, design, and install green stormwater infrastructure such as rain gardens and rainwater harvesting. She earned her master's in public administration from NCSU and has training and experience in facilitation, public engagement, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. She enjoys raising a young child with her partner, hiking, and urban gardening. So thank you, Christy, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Pat, and it's wonderful to see you, even though virtually. It's been a long time, and it's great to be here with you, Cary Rotary. I appreciate the invitation. So Pat asked me to talk about what I do with Sea Grant, which is I'm a dual person with WRI and Sea Grant. I do spend most of my time working with communities on urban stormwater management to improve our waterways, as Pat talked about. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a Sea Grant initiative, collaborative initiative we started a few years ago. It's pretty new, called the Coastal Landscapes Initiative. So while the initiative is focusing on the coast, even if you don't have property out at the coast, many of the practices and some of the plants I'll discuss work across the state, even here in the Piedmont. So it's really the concepts overall that are important. So let me go ahead and share some pictures with you. And I will just ask if anyone can see that, if someone could tell me if you can see my, all right,
Yes.
awesome.
Yes, that's good.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm going to give credit to two of my colleagues for this presentation. We put it together as a team. Jane Harrison is our coastal economist. Gloria Putnam is a community engagement specialist with Sea Grant. So many of you who've had the ability to do so in the pandemic have turned to putting their hands into the dirt as a sort of therapy during these times, including me. And there's research is showing more and more that there are a lot of benefits to being out in nature, even if it's just being around a tree or being around some green. So even just being in your yard or a community park has benefits. See if I can get this. Here we go. So our landscapes provide many functions, and many of those can benefit us while also benefiting nature. So in particular, when we think about how to increase the resilience of our communities to storms and flooding events, the landscapes around us play a role in increasing our resilience. When we increase our landscapes resilience, and I'm talking about a big L here, as well as a little L, our own yards, we increase our own resilience. So this takes me to our landscapes initiative. The CLI is a collaborative effort. It's coordinated by Sea Grant and dependent on expertise from a diverse set of partners in academia, state agencies, nonprofits, and the horticulture industry. Our work is driven by this primary question that you see on the screen: how can we increase nature enhancing landscaping in coastal communities with easy, available, affordable, attractive solutions? So we're really working on both the demand and the supply side here, trying to increase demand for these types of solutions, and also helping industry to try to meet those demands and prepare for them. So we've been working together to support property owners and learning about adopting these nature enhancing landscapes and to support horticulture industry. The full list of our partners is on our webpage, which I will share with you a little bit later. This presentation, the core of this presentation, is one of the tools that we put together to raise awareness of opportunities for homeowners and business owners. So I'm going to share some of these practices as I've got time to enhance nature and community resilience, as well as some of the practical tools that this team has put together to help people know how to put them on the ground. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, I'm sure you've probably heard presentations about this before, is choosing native plants for landscaping. They play a critical role here and at the coast. For one, wildlife relies on native plants for food and shelter. They're well adapted to the harsh conditions of the coast as well as our urban environments. So they generally don't require a lot of watering and fertilizer. Shrubs and trees that are native to the areas tend to be more withstanding of storm impacts because they tend to be more resistant to wind and floods. And when selecting native plants, there's an option of different types, heights, and blooming times. A different assortment will benefit lots of different species. And you can see on this slide, this is an example of a coastal plant that also can do well in Piedmont environments. It's the seashore mallow. You may have seen this pretty perennial in brackish or even freshwater marshes. It has a really long bloom period, which makes it attractive, and it attracts pollinators and hummingbirds. So, you know, in talking about native plants, you may wonder, well, can I choose non-native plants? I mean, what about those? And yeah, that we're not asking people to not use any non-native plants. That's not practical, really. Picking a non-native species, though, you know, it makes sense to pick one that flourishes in our climate and reduces the need for watering. And it's really important to stay away from those species, non-native or native, that spread uncontrolled, like Chinese privet or English ivy, because those types of plants threaten existing native communities of plants and the wildlife that depends on them. I'm going to give you a little quiz now, and maybe, I don't know if you want to put in the chat or if somebody wants to say, can you identify the native tree in this picture? I don't know if there's somebody who can read out the chat. Is it the loblolly bay or mimosa?
Tell
So-
Pat to get to work.
It's so quiet. I cannot see the live room, so I don't know what people are doing there. Maybe you're thinking, wait a second, I've got mimosas in my yard. Okay, I'll just I'll just go ahead. Just to say,
Loblolly.
what's that?
Loblolly.
Loblolly, yeah, that's the native, right. But you're probably more likely to see a mimosa than you are a loblolly, unfortunately. Mimosa, the reason it's so troublesome is it produces shoots from the root sprouts, and it creates dense thickets that prevents the native plants that would grow there from growing. So some alternatives to that are a native red buckeye and eastern redbud. And the loblolly is really important, particularly in our wetter areas in the state here and east of here. And they can be found in Carolina bays, which are a unique geological formation in this part of the world. Okay, another one. This one, can you identify the native bush? Is it the thorny olive or a Yopon holly?
Thorny.
I hear a thorny olive.
Yopon.
Yopon. Got 50-50 here. Okay, so the native one is the Yopon holly, actually. The thorny olive, it's an invasive shrub that's spread by birds dispersing the seeds. Some good alternatives to that are the Yopon and high bush blueberry. The Yopon holly is a great one. It's an evergreen shrub or small tree native to North Carolina, has white flowers and then berries that birds like. And I found this one does really well in our rain gardens, so I'm fond of it for that reason. And then finally, last quiz question, can you identify the native vine? And this one might be a little easier because of the names.
Coral honeysucker.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then the Japanese honeysuckle, it's pretty popular here in the Southeast. It has a really lovely smell, but it is highly invasive, and it forms those mats which prevent the native vegetation. So this coral honeysuckle is a great option. I've seen this a lot in the nurseries near us. We actually planted it along our fence line, along the sidewalk, and we get a lot of people stopping to comment on it. It attracts hummingbirds and pollinators, so it's a great one to plant. Okay, so another strategy, I'm moving on, is to use a mix of plant types for the health and ecological benefits. Health meaning there could be some cooling benefits from having some of those taller trees. For some of the shorter ones, a lot of times we see these properties where you have these lovely, nice, mature trees, but then you don't have the mid-story like the dogwoods and the redbuds or the shrubs. And it's that mix of different heights and types of plants that provides a varied habitat for birds and other wildlife. So it offers those benefits for wildlife. It also helps with carbon dioxide removal from the air. And it can help with infiltrating stormwater runoff as well, having that mix. So another practice is to reduce turf space and adopt lawn alternatives to create wildlife habitat. And the thing about our lawns is they're typically one species of plant, which doesn't do a lot for wildlife. So there are some alternatives that we can use. Ferns, for example, provide foraging space and places for toads and frogs to hide, from ground feeding birds as well. Those are good for shadier spots, the ferns. Wild ginger is another good one for shadier spots. For sunnier spots, there's some really beautiful decorative grasses that are native, like this pink muley grass. There's a lot of different grasses that are low maintenance options. And you can also reduce some lawn space by expanding mulch around trees. And most of us do like to have some turf around our feet. So we're not saying it makes sense to remove everything. You might have a flat spot that's really good for, playing in, having your kids play in, or picnicking in, or having your fire pit like we have. And we've used a lot this past year. So minimizing can just be like claiming back the edges of your property with different borders. And you'll start to see lots of benefits when you do that. So I wanted to give you some evidence that doing this practice will make a difference in who visits your yard. This is actually my yard and my child. We have been reducing our turf through our edges along our fence line and in the very front of our house where we don't use that lawn space for anything. We've been planting pollinators. I would say probably about 85 to 90% native plants in these areas. And it took a couple of years, but then we started seeing monarch butterflies visiting and laying eggs. And it's our third year of actually raising up caterpillars and releasing butterflies. So many benefits, not just having the wildlife visit, but then being able to share it with the kids, especially during homeschooling times that we had. It was a great activity, scientific activity. So if you plant it, they will visit. So to help people understand and learn about some of these plants, our team has created some native plant guides. Now these are focused towards coastal areas, but a lot of the plants are also hardy here in the Piedmont. And I just learned this past week that the Native Plant Society for the Triangle, I think the Triangle or the Piedmont area, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly which one, but they are working with our templates to create a Piedmont native plant guide. I think there's about 34 plants in here, and it talks about how you can use them and the benefits of them, whether they're shady or sunny, those types of things. So we found this to be a really popular resource. We've given out hundreds and hundreds of these, maybe thousands, I'm not sure, but in the last 2 years, they've been really popular. And if you are interested in seeing those, if somebody will just contact me through Pat, I'm happy to get you some. Oops. Okay, another tool that our team has put together to help homeowners and business owners with how to put native plants into landscaping are some design templates. These were created in partnership with the School of Design landscape architecture students. And we have, I believe, 10 different templates, and they are each intended to define edges of property and organize spaces in the yard. And they also could work as standalone gardens. So I think these are great because a lot of us want to do these things, but we don't know exactly how to make them look good. I know when we hear about native plants, we might think of like this wild meadow. And no, we don't want our yard to look like a wild meadow, but they don't have to. If we have some design principles incorporated in this, it can look just as nice as any other garden area, any other landscaped area. So just to give you a quick example, this is the screening with trees example, and it just shows you the type of information on these templates. It shows you some ideas for the plants to use, how to lay them out so that you'll have that screening effect that you're looking for, and that'll be attractive as well. And this one uses sweet bay magnolia, goldenrod, and coneflower. And this is just a quick picture of a woman's home, Frances, in Beaufort, North Carolina. She is working with my colleague Gloria to test out these templates on her property. She has property along a creek. So she's using a number of different borders with different reasons, like supporting pollinators, supporting birds, having an evergreen border, and then having filter strips along the creek to protect that creek side. A few more tips to go through. I'll go through this one quickly. Water and fertilize strategically to maintain water quantity and quality. So reducing water and fertilizer use is a really helpful thing. Watering in the morning so it doesn't evaporate quickly. Watering deeply instead of shallowly so that the plants develop strong, deep roots and can reach the water deep down. And then testing your soil to see what kind of nutrients your yard needs before actually using them. One of the helpful things that we've been sharing with people, and I think this is relative at the coast and here, are storm-ready trees. One of our partners is Paul Hosier, and he has a book out called Seacoast Plants of the Carolinas. It's a beautiful book. It's really helpful. He has a number of different versions of this and just went through and updated it, I think about 2 years ago. He's got a chapter on coastal storms and plants that can withstand and help with that local resilience. And just a few quick highlights of the types of things he talks about. Regardless of the species chosen, if there are trees growing closely together, they have a better advantage because their roots interlock and they will be more hardy than having one standalone tree. So having in clumps rather than in a line makes for a more resilient tree canopy. Mixes of species do better than one species. And then of course, one thing that not many of us think about is to make sure that our trees on our property are healthy and not diseased so they can withstand storms. And if not, maybe we should remove them by having an arborist come and check them out, like a little doctor's visit for your trees. And then another technique are living shorelines. Instead of having bulkheads, when those start to deteriorate, instead of replacing them with a living shoreline to protect the property and provide benefits for wildlife. And this is particularly important out at the coast where the salt marshes provide habitat for those tiny little fish before they grow. And of course, even here in the Piedmont on rivers or on lakes, this is also important. I want to do a time check. I have until 1:25, correct?
Right.
I'll go through these real quick. I know we start a little bit late. So of course, in my work in community, I partner with people to protect and improve our waterways. And like Pat says, I work on watersheds. So I think a lot about how to prevent stormwater from running off our hard surfaces, like our rooftops and our driveways, into the streams where they cause erosion and habitat degradation and flooding. We can all have a part in the solution to downstream flooding. So the way we manage our stormwater is also another landscape technique to think about. So we used to want to get rainwater to leave our property as fast as possible, but now we know it's better if we can manage it on site as much as we can and have it as a benefit on site as well. So rain barrels and rainwater cisterns are one option. Directing rooftop downspouts away from hard surfaces, away from the streets where they go into storm drains. On the right, you'll see a picture here of St. Ambrose Episcopal Church in Southeast Raleigh. They have created a prayer garden that uses some of these techniques. Behind the wooden slats are large 800-gallon cisterns for collecting stormwater, and their runoff flows into this vegetated area, which, can someone tell me what that vegetated area is called? I wrote a little haiku about it. They're rain gardens. And a rain garden is just a landscaped area that is lower than the rest of the area that allows stormwater to soak in. And this was one at a homeowner's house, the Katak Rain Garden in Cary. We've, over the years in the Black Creek watershed, done a number of residential and of course the larger scale rain gardens to help with that problem. And I was recently, I had the good fortune to work with Principal Schleiser at Kingswood Elementary to do a large rain garden with them and a large rainwater harvesting cistern, which you can see the art teacher and students painted. And also we removed a non-native plant, Nandina, that was everywhere that's harmful for birds, and replaced that with 80% native plants. So it was a great partnership. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is my favorite trees for reducing stormwater. And this is a picture of my favorite tree in my yard before I even knew that it was the best urban Piedmont tree for reducing rainwater runoff. Can anyone guess what that tree is? It's hard to tell with no leaves on it.
Bradford pear.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
Is it an oak?
Nope. Not an oak. They did study that. So our colleagues at the USDA Forest Service did a study recently in the Triangle area to see which trees soak up the most rainwater. And they found that red maples are the one. So this is a red maple. So if you're thinking of planting a tree and you have maybe a wet area of your yard and you want to soak up as much as possible, a red maple is a good choice. And then finally, I wanted to let you know, we do have a series of guides on how to install these in your yard called Rainscapes. And it's at this website, go.ncsu.edu/rainscaping. And finally, the Coastal Landscapes Initiative has all of the resources I talked about on their website here at the top of this screen, as well as a number of other initiatives that the team is working on. I think the next thing we're going to be meeting in April is to dig more into what can we do with industry to help with that side of things. So I'm going to end here. If there's any questions, I don't know if there's time or not, but I really appreciate you giving me your time and letting me talk to you.
Thanks, Christy.
I'm going to unshare.
Got questions in chat.
That's correct, Jim. If you all would like to submit some questions in the chat, we do have time for 1 or 2 questions. Christy, thank you for your presentation and your patience this afternoon.
No problem.
We have a question from inside McGregor, from a familiar face, Ms. Hudson.
Hey, Christy, I wanted to ask you for my Rotary Club, if you have any further plans for the West Cary Gardens and how we might be involved.
Thank you for asking. I did mean to bring that up. Yes, we had a volunteer step forward to sponsor new plants and mulch at West Cary Middle School in those 2 rain gardens. And we were actually ready to go a year ago. We had it all planned out. We had our list of plants. And then the pandemic sent us all home. And the school system and NC State didn't want to move forward with it at that time, understandably so. So now we're trying to group back up to do this. We want to have a couple socially distanced work days. It will probably be in April or early May, and I can share with you what those final dates are going to be. I'm just trying to hone those down with the volunteers. We have a handful of volunteers who have been actually helping coordinate this. And I imagine they're quite overgrown right now, these types of things. It's like any garden, they need regular garden care. And at the schools, we've been a little challenged to try and support the schools to keep their rain gardens in tip-top shape. So I'll share those dates. Is it okay if I share those with you, Pat, once I finalize those, and we'll have a sign up.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christy, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. I was recently out in Washington, North Carolina, and just outside the village, there's a little isthmus there where they built some houses up on very high posts and poles, beautiful. But if you go to the edge of the water, there's about 6 inches between the top of the turf and the water on the best circumstances. You know, it seemed to me at the time, when that was laid out, why didn't they soften that and put grasses and all of that in there that, you know, that would soften the rise of the water as it comes in? Because it's really, they're going to be able to live in their houses, but when it have high tide, they won't be able to get out of them. That's a sad situation.
Yeah, that's tough. I just think some of the developments that come in our state are led by developers from other states who maybe don't understand the unique ecology of where they're building. And definitely having partnerships on those developments where there's some landscape architects who are local would help with that. But I have a feeling, you know, they're going to be coming to maybe their local officials asking for help, it sounds like, at some point. So but this is that's good to know about. I mean, we're trying to get the word out about, you know, these edges of where the water meets the land are really a key place for these strategies for both people and wildlife. So I appreciate that you noticed that.
It's important.
Great. Well, thank you, Christy. I'd like to turn it over now to Alan Kane so he can express our club's thanks.
Okay, Ms. Perrin, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I think everyone here would agree that maintaining North Carolina's native plant life and utilizing innovative stormwater practices helps to maintain North Carolina's unique character and beauty. And we are appreciative of all the important work that you do there. And so on behalf of all of the members of the Cary Rotary Club and your fellow NC State MPA graduates who are on the call, I know there are at least 2 of them, we would like to present to you a box of note cards that have been developed by our very own member and local artist, Jerry Miller. And so we will get those to you as soon as possible. Thank you again for spending time with us today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Christy. What a great presentation. But I think for a few in this room, we may need you put them back through gardening 101, Pat. So we may want to keep that on our agenda for an upcoming meeting. Anyway, great presentation. And so next week, we've got another one right after the other. We're fortunate to have Alan, who will be hosting next week, and Eric Chapman will be coming to the club either virtually or in person. He's the information technology security manager for the town of Cary. Cybersecurity, in other words. And in 2 weeks, David Coulter will be hosting Phil Kirk from the North Carolina wine industry. That should be interesting. All right, next week's meal. Not only is it pork, It's 6-ounce pork with roasted potatoes, green beans, and a mustard gravy. All right, it doesn't get any better than that. And I'd like to thank everybody again for being here today in person, on Zoom, virtually taking time out of your schedule to make this club what it's all about. I'm looking forward to more and more people joining us each and every week as people become more and more comfortable. And as the spring season starts heating up, I know that's going to be a lot of fun for each of us. And now, with that, I'd like to call on Dr. Bruce Howell to lead us out in the 4-way test. Dr. Howell?
The things we think, say, and do.
Is it true? Is it fair, false, or certain? Will it better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you. Meeting is ended. Everybody have a great rest of the week. Food, cereal, and taking that stuff down to Interact.
To their building.
Yeah, and then we will be on April 17th, we'll have a whole, basically garage full of stuff. We're gonna run down there via trucks for that day. So
Okay.
we'll need several Rotarians to help execute on that. So we got that going up. Trivia night, April 9th. So it's virtual, hour and a half. It's a BYOB, but pay attention to that. We're paying $200 to BYOM. Yeah. Memory.
Yeah, exactly.
You might need that. So yeah, we got some good stuff coming up. Just keep reading emails and we'll keep everybody up to speed on what's good.
Okay. Where's your Rotary mask? You got an e-fire, man.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I've got it.
See you, man.
You see it, I'll take care. I've got it. And it's along with about 30 in Ireland. And I just talked to Julie.
Big decisions, which one to wear.
Well, no, it's a matter of finding.
Oh.
Now it's like, it's just an adventure. You're right, I gotta find it and bring it. I just find that I'm always carrying mobile disposables.
Did you sell them all?
We've got
Got a lot of them then.
yeah, that's a good point.
Bring a handful and say, here they are, special price today.
$40. I think that's a good point. We'll do that. I
Okay.
like it.
Be an increasing price.
You look great. You gotta put on some LV.
Yeah, a little bit.